Hi there, it's Gillian Hill of Jill Hill Edits. I'm here today to talk to you on part one of common problems that I notice when I am editing novels and fiction, sometimes non-fiction as well, particularly if it has that creative non-fiction side to it where storytelling is being used. But mostly in fiction I see this. So the one that I want to talk about today is which tense you use as you're telling your story. So obviously there's lots of different tenses to use. The most common is just to use simple past tense. He said, she walked into the coffee store and sat down to wait for the person she was due to meet. Something like that. That's simple past tense. And most pieces are written in that. If you get into other tenses, that becomes a little more complicated, and that would be a different video to discuss that. But today we're just going to look at the simple past tense. There's a lot of benefits of using it. Your reader very easily understands what's going on. Even though it is not in the active present tense, it's one of the closest tenses to that, and it's one of the most common ones we use. So a reader is able to visualize it very well. We naturally use past tense for something that happened even 5 seconds ago. So although we talk about it as the past tense as something that happened in the past, when we think about things, when we use that tense, we often think about them as being almost in the present tense, something that just happened, so it can still feel very immediate to us. So the bonus of that is that it can really connect to your audience. So it's easy for them to understand because they use it all the time. It's easy for you to write in, and it still gives them that immediacy that possibly writing in the present tense might, but the present tense would feel more awkward. So the present tense, an example would be, she walks into the coffee store and looks around before she takes a seat. So that would be present tense, and it gets a little awkward and complicated for reader, even though it sounds more like it's in the moment. It's a little harder work in our brain to process, and so it's easier to use that past tense, which can still feel immediate. However, one of the common problems that I notice in first drafts and with beginner writers is that as writers move into action scenes, so they're moving into something very exciting happening. So that could be a fight scene. Sometimes it could be a chase scene. It usually involves quite a lot of physical movement, so it's less common for this problem to occur if two people are sitting in a coffee shop having a conversation. But it's very common if people are moving in the scene and there's a lot of tension and action. And the common problem that writers have there is that they move into the present tense. I think that's because it feels even more immediate as they're writing. And as they really immerse themselves in the scene and they're picturing, especially for example in a fight scene, like where arms move or legs move, people move backwards, someone goes to hit, punch, for example, or a gun is being shot or a knife is being used. In those kind of situations, a writer will often move into present tense as they're writing, because it's almost like they're channeling the action through their fingers onto the keyboard or with their pen. And so the immediacy of what's happening in the moment comes out, and they write it and they move without even really realizing it into present tense. So if you are looking to send your work to an editor and you're looking to do some editing yourself to reduce the amount of time it takes for your editor and to reduce the costs, then I would strongly recommend that you read through your piece, or you use a search and find on your whichever computer program you're using, to look for present tense verbs. And wherever you find them, just double check. So you may have present tense verbs correctly in dialogue, for example, and there may be certain places where it's appropriate, but generally it's probably not appropriate. And so if you do a search and find for those types of verbs, and I would also recommend just reading it through, because it's hard to know. I mean, there will be common verbs like maybe jumps, walks, says rather than said, but it's hard to pick up all of them, so you really have to read through the whole thing. But when you are reading through, keep an eye out for that, for moving into present tense, particularly on these scenes that get exciting. If you can work through that yourself, find where that happens, move things back into past tense, then that's going to save you time because your editor's not going to have to do it for you. And hopefully that means that saves you money and your editor can focus on other things when they're editing your manuscript for you.